young people in the UK who they've been taken to a mosque and they're learning how to bow to Allah and to chant. Welcome to another show of the MAGA Kingdom Report. In today's special, we'll be talking about multiculturalism and Islam. In the West, we take pride in values of tolerance and freedom of religion. But as we will be discussing, the religion of Islam has a different point of view. So let's take a look, and I want to show you a few clips. Here's a talk by Eva Vlaardingerbroek, a Dutch political commentator at the CPAC convention in Hungary in 2024. Let's take a look.
Through the past 7 days in Europe. This week in Stockholm, 3 elderly women in their 70s were stabbed in broad daylight on the streets. In London, 4 people were stabbed in a time span of just 42 hours. In Paris, hundreds of African migrants took to the street to riot. And in Brigalow, also in France, yet another church was burned down to the ground. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is just a few incidents in just a couple of days on our beautiful continent. But we all know that these incidents aren't incidents anymore. If there's one thing that's for sure, is that we know, and our governments also know, that there is a link between mass migration and crime. In the Dutch city of Dordrecht, something interesting happened the other day. They announced, and this is a small city in the Netherlands, in my home country, that a new asylum center will be put in that little town. And what did the municipality do? They said, we are going to offer citizens who live in the vicinity of this center 1,000 euros to take extra safety measures. Our new reality in Europe consists of frequent rapes, stabbings, killings, murders, shootings, even beheadings. But let me be clear about one thing. This did not used to happen before. This is a newly imported problem. Samuel P. Huntington predicted this over 25 years ago when he wrote, and I quote, "In the new world of mass migration, the most pervasive, important, and dangerous conflicts will not be between the social classes. They will not be between the rich and the poor. They will be between peoples belonging to different cultural entities. Tribal wars and ethnic conflicts will occur within civilizations." Well, boy, was he right. And the worst part is, we as a society seem to have become indifferent to it. When another white boy or white girl dies at the hand of an immigrant, we might shake our head, we might let out a sigh, we might even get angry for a minute or two, and then we go on with our lives. We offer the family thoughts and prayers, but nothing ever changes. Ladies and gentlemen, what does that say about us? This is a response of a society that has already given up, a society that has already accepted its defeat. But is this true? Have we given up? Do we really accept the new reality that our globalist leaders have in mind for us? I know one thing for sure, and that is that if nothing changes, if we don't start to seriously fight for our continent, for our religion, for our people, our countries, then this time that we live in will go down in history as the time in which Western nations no longer had to get invaded by hostile armies in order to be conquered. This time will then go down in history as the period in which the invader was actively invited in by a corrupt elite. And not only did this corrupt elite invite the enemy in, they made the native population pay for it too. Everyone who has eyes can see it. The native, white, Christian European population is being replaced at an ever-accelerating rate. Let me back this up for you with some statistics from my home country. Let's take Amsterdam, the capital. Amsterdam currently consists of 56% migrants. The Hague, 58% migrants. Rotterdam, almost 60% migrants. And of course, most of these immigrants come from non-Christian, non-Western, African and Middle Eastern countries. Conclusion, the Dutch population is already outnumbered in the majority of our cities. But let's look onwards. London, 54% migrants. Again, conclusion, native population outnumbered. Brussels, color me shocked, 70% migrants. Conclusion, native population majorly outnumbered. And other Europeans will, of course, follow suit soon if they haven't already. So I'm going to draw the forbidden conclusion here. The Great Replacement theory is no longer a theory. It's reality. And what's interesting about replacement is that the establishment will either deny its existence, or when they admit to it, they say that it's a good thing that the native European population is soon no longer a majority on its own continent. Dutch national disgrace and dubbed climate pope Frans Timmermans already stated in 2015 that diversity is humanity's destiny and that Europe will be diverse. And of course, by now, I think we all know what they mean with the word diversity. It means less white people, less of you. Imagine this in an Asian or an African country. Imagine their leaders rejoicing in the fact that their people will soon no longer be a majority in their own country. Absolutely unthinkable, unimaginable. So what in the world is wrong with our leaders? The underlying sentiment of what they say is always the same. Our establishment claims that white people are evil and that our history is somehow fundamentally different from that of others. Consciously or unconsciously, they have sucked up the lies and the anti-white dogmas of the neo-Marxist critical race theory. That's why the totalitarians in Brussels are trying to force you, the Hungarian people, a sovereign nation, to accept immigrants despite the fact that the population has said no, and so has the government. But make no mistake, the majority of the Dutch people haven't asked for this either. Just like Brussels is forcing Hungary to accept these hordes of immigrants, they are doing the same now, even in the smallest of towns in the Netherlands. No part may remain Dutch in the traditional sense of the word. No part of Europe may remain European. And it's not difficult to understand why. If the old Europe still exists in certain places, then people will be able to compare the new Europe to the old, and newsflash, they will prefer the old. That's why the Eurocrats hate Hungary so much. And their message is clear. Our way of life, our Christian religion, our nations, they have to go, without exception. Their vision of the future is the neoliberal, unrecognizable Europe, where every city becomes kind of like Brussels. Ugly, dirty, unsafe, zero social cohesion.
Okay, I think you get the point. There's massive immigration. Look, I have very mixed feelings about this because immigration can be a good thing, obviously, right? People have, immigrated to the United States of, over 2 centuries, and they've brought a new energy and investment and productivity and population. The problem comes in when you have people coming in who have a quite different value system and religious belief structure that is in sharp conflict with the modern society, which is based on values of tolerance, religious freedom, and 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 they take advantage of that. And that's what I want to talk about today. And I look forward to hearing what you think about this issue too. So now I'd like to share a talk by Konstantin Kisin about the situation in the UK.
Problem is not immigration, it's Islam. There are three broad schools of thought on this issue. The progressive response is the head in the sand mantra of diversity is our greatest strength. The slogan, mindlessly repeated, is a proxy for a whole host of dishonesties. First, and for as long as possible, they will pretend that there is no problem. When Islamist terrorism is discussed, they will immediately try to contextualize the debate by talking about far-right violence and other threats. Their concerns are not incorrect in that the far right does have a violent fringe, and our police and security services must remain vigilant in dealing with it. But the fact remains, 75% of MI5's caseload involves Islamist terrorism, with over 90% of the 43,000 people on MI5's terror watch list being Islamist extremists. To understand this in its actual context, consider that only 6% of people in Britain are Muslim. In other words, Islamist extremism is not only a huge problem, it's a disproportionately huge problem.
Okay, I think he said it very well. 90% of the more than 40,000 extremists in the UK are on the MI5 watch list are Muslim terrorist extremists, okay? There's a disproportionate problem. The issue is whether that the violence is condoned and recommended and encouraged by the religion. If a young man from a Christian background robs or kills somebody or rapes somebody, that is not praised in the teaching of the New Testament. If a Jewish young person does something criminal, that is not recommended and praised in the Torah, right? Same thing for other the Buddhism, etc. But actually, in the Quran and the Hadiths, which are about the life of Muhammad, it's actually a little bit different. Okay, so we'll get into that. Let me share two more examples of the multiculturalism efforts in the UK and also in the United States. Young people in the UK who they've been taken to a mosque and they're learning how to bow to Allah and to chant. Okay, so they look like they're quite young. I would say probably 7 or 8 years old, and they're being taught to chant Islamic chants. I don't think that they've been taken to a church, to a Catholic church to recite the Rosary, or to a Protestant church to recite the Lord's Prayer, or to a synagogue. No, but they have been taken to the mosque. Let me give you one more example of what's going on. Actually, in the state of Pennsylvania, where I live, Islamic school in Pennsylvania gets millions of tax dollars. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, a Democrat, just announced a $5 million grant funded by taxpayers to the Al-Aqsa Islamic Society of Philadelphia to expand its K-12 Muslim school. It's aimed at helping the Muslim group expand the school from 300 students to 3,000, according to the officials. Okay, well, there you have it. We have funding for expanding a Muslim-only school in Philadelphia. I I don't think government funds are being used to build Christian schools or to build Jewish yeshivas and schools. I don't think that's taking place. So it is a little bit strange. I actually want to read to you some passages. I have three chapters in my book, Genesis 1:28, Civilization and Its Enemies. And I want to dig into why do the leftists support Islamic terrorists? What is the connection? We see Queers for Palestine, woke groups here in the United States demonstrating on behalf of Hamas. What exactly is the connection between supporters of Islamist radicals in the Middle East and leftist protesters in America and other nations around the world? February 2024's monthly review, a Marxist publication, makes it pretty clear. The Palestinians are seen as, quote, the forefront of the struggle against capitalism and the United States, and their struggle defines the struggle of everyone for freedom all over. The authors of the emerging Red-Green Alliance, where political Islam meets the radical left, wrote the following. No matter how unlikely it may seem, radical leftists and Islamists have come closer in recent years, drawing on substantial ideological interchange and operating at both state and non-state levels. The two movements are building a common front against the United States and its allies. So now I'd like to show you three clips from speakers, Muslim leaders and imams speaking and giving guidance about their views about the issue of capitalism and the free enterprise system and the democratic system in the West. Let's take a look.
Dear brothers and sisters, as we come across another Black Friday, a lot of times when we talk about the isms that are the most dangerous and that are most contradictory to Islam, we leave out one of the most dangerous isms, and that is consumerism.
We are religious, and therefore we are fighting the injustice and destruction created by capitalism.
Capitalism goes from an Aqidah perspective. They believe in the freedom of ownership, right? Whereas we do not believe in the freedom of ownership. We believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can tell us how to run the system, right?
Number one enemy of Islam today is the ideology of capitalism.
Everything we represent goes in total contradiction to what the West represents. Because all of Islam is in opposition of secularism.
The Sharia and the modern state, both of those two things together are contradictions.
America is the cancer. America, the American government, secularism, democracy, capitalism, these are cancers.
We need to know the United States as an economy, as a superpower is falling down. This is the time now, they're weak. It's the time now to go and do jihad and call them to accept Islam and implement Islam on them.
Jihad must be a common, normal term on the tongues and on your social media and in the masajid and elsewhere. It's time to seek lessons on the rules and regulations of jihad from its chapters that are in every single reference book of fiqh. It's time to learn the glory and honor of jihad from the books of seerah. It's time the mothers nurse their infants with the love of jihad and the ambition of wanting to become a mujahid and a shaheed. It's about time the youth brag about the teachings of jihad that are in the Quran and in the Sunnah and in the seerah. Never be ashamed of teachings that are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wherever they are. Never compromise. Never compromise so the kuffar will think your religion is cute, or so they'll like you, or like Islam.
Every Muslim believes in jihad. Jihad is part of Islam, just salah is part of Islam. Today, the kuffar, they want us to delete this aspect of our deen. And you can understand just in the simple fact of what is the definition of jihad. If you understand, who do you do jihad against? You don't do jihad against Muslims. Jihad is against the kuffar. So is there any kind of comments to surprise why they don't want Muslims to believe in jihad?
because they don't want us to do jihad against them.
Made more clear for me also the hostility not just to democracy but also to the right of ownership. Of course, non-Muslims have to, if they don't convert to the Muslim faith, they have to pay the jizya tax, right? The Christians and Jews, non-Muslims in Muslim dominant countries have to pay to show their inferior status. And it's actually been quite effective, actually. Egypt, for instance, it was a Christian nation. All of North Africa was Christian. The apostles went to North Africa and the Middle East. It was all Christian. And now Egypt is 90% Muslim and only 10% Christian. And the Christians who are living in Egypt, the Copts, they're suffering a lot of persecution. So this idea that the Muslim leaders should control the economy, control, for instance, who gets certain resources, be in control of that. We can see this actually in Gaza, where relief supplies delivered from Israel are given to the leaders. Well, who are the leaders in Gaza? It's Hamas. Hamas is the government of Gaza, and they determine who gets the food. There have been cases of average citizen not getting food. Basically, some have been driven to actually take food from the relief trucks, and this is how they're treated if they're found to not obey the leader. These are men who have been caught, quote, stealing food for their families. Let's take a look. I don't like to show these kinds of videos, but I think to understand what's actually going on, I think you need to see it. Now, I found a video of an ex-Muslim discussing the thinking, the Muslim mindset as he understands it. And I think it's very instructive. Let's take a look.
How easy is it to become radicalized if you're a Muslim?
Oh, very easy.
Why is that?
Because it's a manual. The religion itself, the Quran, the Hadiths, and everything, the religion itself is a manual to become radical, right? And this is not radical for the good. You have to be a bad Muslim if you're a good person. You have to ignore Islam. Right? So a lot of people say, oh, they are good Muslims. No, they're not good Muslims. The only good Muslims are Taliban, right? And all the people like them.
What motivates a terrorist to do that kind of thing? What's the driving force? Why do they do that?
You're the enemy. They're fighting for the Ummah. The Ummah is everything. It's the Muslim Ummah. And no matter which country they are, they're part of one country, the Islamic country in their head, right? Now, people have mental issues, right? Whether they are Muslims or whatever religion they are, right? But their religions don't give them an excuse to exercise their mental issues unless you're in the woke category these days, right? But they don't give you exercise to, go ahead with your mental issues. Islam does. Islam plays on the resentment. Islam plays on the victimhood of people. It tells them, oh, you are being oppressed and stuff. It's the first religion that does that, right? It started from Muhammad. When Jews would not accept him as a prophet, he played the victimhood card. Oh, they're being discriminatory towards me. And then that's how he motivated people, right? The main motivating force in Islam is victimhood. It tells them, look, the whole world is against you. So you have to fight them, right? And then you add on things on top of things on top of things about their, like, all their rules and regulations within Islam. It just makes them heretical. So it would tell them, like, if you not, like, let's say someone said something against Muhammad, right? They have to do it, because according to their own teachings, if they don't do it, they might themselves go to hell.
They'll want to seek revenge even if it's 20, 30 years later, like we've seen with Salman Rushdie recently.
The funny thing is the Pakistanis are still seeking revenge for what happened in the Crusades. They have to gaslight themselves every day to say their prophet was a good prophet. They have to investigate themselves. They have to reflect. Are you going to say that you are associated with a religion whose prophet had sex with a 9-year-old girl, right? Who murdered a whole tribe of Jews, right? Just to get that woman, right? The Jewish woman, and had his way with her, like took her away from, like killed her husband, and then had sex with her same day, right? Just to take her as sex slaves. Are you able to say that you are part of a good religion where your prophet is doing those things, having sex slaves, having multiple wives and stuff, so much interested in the materialistic things, doing 85 bloody wars, campaigns in 10 years?
And he basically is saying that if you have a Muslim who is a good person, he's disobeying the Quran. I think that's a really interesting insight that he gave. All right, I'd like to finish up the show by looking at the adherents of the Islamic faith treat women and treat girls. An imam, someone has called in to a show and telling him that her brother is raping his daughter. And this is the advice that he gives.
سأتكلم عن ذلك بالتفصيل، ما عاد يحتاج تكملين السؤال. أختي مسارة ذكرت أن هناك شخص يتحرش بابنته، ولا شك أن هذا نوع من الشذوذ والعياذ بالله ونوع من الفاحشة. ويعني أيضا ينبغي على البنت ألا تلبس لباسا فاضحا أمام أبيها. يا جماعة بعض البنات أحيانا تكون بشبابها وجسمها جميل أحيانا ونحو ذلك، وتلبس لباسا ضيقا من البنطلونات والبلايز القصيرة وتخرج إلى أبيها. برضو أبوها شاب ربما فتن بابنتها وربما سلم عليها أو قبلها أو ضمها، يكون ربما الشيطان يرزه لبعض الأمور. فأنا أدعو أيضا مثل هذه البنت وغيرها يعني في مرحلة شبابها أن تلبس لباسا سيئا أمام أبيها، أو ربما أبرزت شيئا من ثديها أو نحو ذلك بناء على أنه أبوها. لكن يبقى أن هذا الأب شاب لا يجوز لها أن تلبس اللباس الضيق. الأمر الثاني لا تخلو بأبيها.
She should not be alone with her father. They shouldn't sit alone in a room by themselves. To make sure their mother or the siblings are present. Allah facilitates her affairs and she gets married. He does say in the beginning, this is wrong, this is evil. But then he spends most of his time not telling the woman to take her daughter and run as fast as she can away from this child abuser who's committing incest. No, she's saying the girl has to change, cover herself up. She has to not be alone in a room with her father. Do you want this kind of norm to be practiced in the United States or in the UK or wherever you live, where children need to be, look, there are abusers from maybe a Christian background, but the ministers don't put the blame on the daughter. The religious leaders say, this is evil, this is wrong, you should report this and have this abuser prosecuted, right? That's not what this imam is saying. He's not saying that this man has committed a crime and should be punished for his crime. He's saying the women have to change their behavior. It's really very shocking. I'll just put it that way. Actually, there's a solution. According to certain Muslim teachers, there is a solution. And let me show you what they think it is. Here we go. We have a 7-year-old girl wears a hijab or burqa so she won't tempt Muslim rapists or I guess her father. And here we go. Here's the Muslim solution.
पता लगा कि वो जो देहात में रहने वाले शख्स हैं
So
वो तो बहुत लिबरल हैं और वो जो लिबरल
start
सोच है
even
वो
from the age of
किसी
7, apparently,
बड़े से बड़े लिबरल की सोच से भी ज्यादा
to
लिबरल
dress
होती है।
up
हमने कहा कि जो हमारी बच्ची
girls,
है, हमारी और बच्चियां भी हैं, वो तो नहीं ऐसे करती।
cover up
इस
their
बच्ची ने कहा कि
faces,
मेरी
cover
ये
their
चॉइस है
bodies.
कि जो अम्मी पहनती है मैंने वो पहनना है।
Do you want our culture to change in this direction? And my answer is no, absolutely not. This is not the Judeo-Christian society. Look, the Judeo-Christian society is not perfect. I know that. But I don't think that this is the direction that we want to go. Unfortunately, in many European countries, there's already, I don't have time today to go into in Germany, for instance, there have been many rapes by Muslim young men, and the German courts have said, released them and not prosecuted them, not found them guilty, not sent them to prison, because apparently it's the fault of the girl. You know, the girl wanted it or something like that. She wanted to be raped. Unbelievable what's happening in German courts and even in France and in many European countries. They have a big problem. Okay, and then my last example, let me show you one more. This is about a Yazidi woman who was captured by ISIS and her mother as well. So he's explaining that I was raped every day. ISIS killed my mother because she was too old to be a sex slave. They killed all my siblings for refusing to convert to Islam. They call us devil worshippers. This is going on right now in nations where there are ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Afghanistan, after we abandoned our friends and allies who fought together with us in Afghanistan, and we just abandoned them and told them, you're on your own, good luck. And this is what's going on. And this is what many of them want to bring to Europe and even to the West. I want to end this broadcast with a hopeful message, okay? So let me share one thing that gives me a little bit of hope, and we'll take a look. A young Muslim girl who has accepted Jesus Christ. So let's take a look. Being baptized. There's many aspects to this issue, right? There's a political aspect, there's a military aspect, there's a legal aspect. People who there should be one standard for crimes in every country. We should not make exceptions for certain groups that they are allowed to commit criminal acts, rape or incest. These are things which should be judged by one standard, not more than one. There needs to be control over immigration. There needs to be assimilation, not multiculturalism. But ultimately, the solution, I believe, is a spiritual solution. And people come into relationship with God through Christ, then their life changes. That's true for all of us, right? So I would say that for men, women, children, everybody, we need to change the heart. We need to take the rapist out of my own heart. The Western society is based on the operating system of the teaching and person of Jesus Christ. The further away we get from Christianity in the West, we're going to see more and more of this bad behavior, criminal behavior, horrific treatment of women and children. It's going to only increase. So that's what I want to say today. Thank you for watching.